For our next session, we are joined by Ciaran Kirk, Operations Director of DataBuilders, and Scott Gamester, VP of Platforms and Data from Diaceutics, to discuss next generation analytics and the monetization of data. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is, as Lorcan said, is Ciaran Kirk. I am the Operations Director with DataBuilders, and I'm delighted to have with me today Scott Gamester. So first it's Gamester, so you're a good name for a person in analytics and data, and you might talk about that in a second. So Scott is the Vice President of Platforms and Data at Diaceutics, and he's accountable for all things data and analytics with the ownership of engineering, data science and product. Scott's incredibly passionate about using data and technology to help customers see around corners. So I'm delighted Scott is from the States, from Connecticut. He made it over this week, and I'm delighted he can make it down and work with us here today. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. About the name, I have 4 daughters. I'm blessed to have 4 daughters, and not a single one of them will ever be going into data science. They all want to be artists. But my one daughter, Grace, I had her so close. I had convinced her to be maybe an economics major, head towards data science, and I almost had her, and then she said, "Dad, I want to major in comedy." And that is a thing. I'm not sure whether it's a thing here in Ireland, but it's definitely a thing. And I said, "Sweetie, Daddy writes algorithms to screen out fake resumes like that with the last name of Gamester and a major of comedy. You're never going to get through any LinkedIn screening ever." So I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, great. Scott is a customer of ours, and he uses our Sisense platform. Sisense is one of the market-leading BI platforms, and we're delighted to have a chat today with Scott about what he is doing with the solution and in data engineering in general. So, Scott, a lot of companies talk about being data-driven, and I thought Bill's presentation this morning where he really quantified more than being data-driven about the economics of data. But I actually think that you guys in Diaceutics are actually doing that you actually do understand the value of data and how you're monetizing that data. Can you explain to us what you're actually doing?
Sure. I mean, healthcare is the original data-driven business. My doctor, my GP, have been seeing him for 20 years. He's old school. He's now in his 70s, and he has a stack of papers this large on me. And every time I sit down with him, he goes through them and says, "Hey, how's your collarbone doing? I've broken my collarbone several times," right? So there's original data-driven business, right? From paper to today from EHRs, right? But the data in the healthcare system in the United States, and I've seen this generally in other places. I haven't worked with every healthcare country with their healthcare, but it's very, very messy and incomplete. And it's hard to get a concrete view. In the United States, it's because you have this fragmented system of each hospital can have a different EHR system. And bring that all together so that you can get insight out of that is really, really difficult. For a second, if there's any clinicians in the room, I want to apologize. Please don't find me later and correct me on my clinical knowledge. I'm definitely a data person. But in our business, we're in the business of, Diaceutics is in the business of precision medicine and making testing better. Because testing is incredibly important for precision medicine. So if you get cancer, you always, I grew up near Boston, near some of the best hospitals in the world. When you get cancer, you believe that you're going to have this, this team of doctors who got all the tests, right? But essentially, cancer 10, 20 years ago was, here's a bunch of poison. Maybe it won't kill you. Hopefully, it'll work. Very, very general, medications and treatments. While in the precision medicine and the genetic testing space or the genetic space, the medicines that are out there are targeting specific genetic mutations. They're much more successful and they're much more targeted. But that testing that occurs, the testing We recently did a study, and we released it last week with the Precision Medicine Institute, that found that 64% of the people, 64% of the patients didn't get that testing necessary to identify that, right? For many different reasons. Perhaps it wasn't ordered, perhaps there was a processing issue. And when you think about data, boy, that's a lot of data to be able to fix, right?
And that is like the scale of data that you guys are doing. Like just to give the audience the scale, like it's a massive network, the DXRX network that you've built. It's testing all over the world. And of course, it's really important that that data is there to give good results. So how have you guys scaled that up and got that data together?
So you know, I'm lucky to have inherited a pretty great team that has focused on, whenever you arrive at a new job, I've been with Diaceutics now for 11 months, but whenever you arrive at a new job, there's always that point. There's my favorite Simpsons episode has someone opening up a closet or a control panel that's supposed to be doing something, and animals come out, right? And they say raccoons, right? It's one of my favorite things. So there's always that one server that you can never touch because it's running Windows 95, and if anyone touches it, it'll run auto update, and the whole company will fail.
Yeah.
Right. Which is at Diaceutics we have. Thankfully, we're cloud native. But we're built on the foundations of really, really being able to scale, which is Agile, DevOps, infrastructure as code, SaaS where possible, and really focusing as our core team on doing the things that add value versus doing the things that are cool, right? So anybody here can spin up their own Kubernetes cluster, can fire up their own whatever cluster, and engineers love to do that, right? But it's much, much faster and better to go, so for example, a tool like Sisense, right?
Yeah.
It gives me the backbone to be able to deploy my data on a platform and then distribute that across where my customers want to be, so that you're taking your time as a company focusing on your core competencies and what you can actually deliver versus building cool stuff. Right? We build cool stuff with data. We just take advantage of all the infrastructure and tech that's out there to make that happen.
And you've been very much, it's cloud first and everything is in the cloud. And
I was thinking about this the other day. One of my favorite things to do when I was younger was back when I was 5 years ago when I was 25, was to go on data center tours, right? I love data center tours, right? You
come to the right country.
Yeah, right? They're amazing, right? You get to see how they do keep the oil heated in the generator back up so that they can fire instantly and be up 3 seconds faster so that the battery, that's all amazing. But you think about back in the olden days of like, if I had to do the olden days of having your own data center, if I have to have a data center and maintain that globally because there are restrictions on some of the data that we have, some of it can't leave Europe, some of it can't leave the United States. A lot of it has to be sandboxed in its own environment. You could never do that. You could absolutely never do that. I can't even imagine that what it would take for me to build a team to do that. And it would be impossible for, we're located up in Northern Ireland. We're headquartered there. I wouldn't be able to scale with the size of the organization to do that without the cloud.
No, and that global reach as well, the cloud just fits in that, and making sure that data governance and the data assurance has to be built in as well is really important, particularly for medical data.
I mean, as a global company dealing with medical data, we have to work where the regulations require us, and then also be able to get our data where our clients are. Right. So when we talk about, for example, your tool, being able to take a chart and push that out and syndicate that on the client's platform seamlessly, it's brilliant.
That's good to hear. And what do you use the analytics and Diaceutics for? Like what kind of things? There's an internal use case, and then you're also looking at external as well.
So unfortunately, one of the speakers this morning, I was on the train, so I missed it. But one of the speakers this morning stole my "data is the new oil" line, so I won't go over that part with you. I was really upset. We had a little tussle in the green room. Everything's fine. But oil has changed our world, right? But it's not oil that's interesting. It's what we do with oil, and it's the same conversation, right? So we do primarily two things with data, right? We help our customers, and that's pharma, to be able to understand the market and be able to understand the testing landscape, right? So to be able to understand who is able, if I launch $1 billion drug, and I'm about to go to market. If nobody can test that, right? If nobody has the devices to test that in France,
Yeah.
if nobody has the capability to run the test, the assay themselves, that's an easy problem 3 years ahead of your launch.
Yeah.
3 weeks ahead of your launch, you're going to have some really embarrassing write-downs.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one. And then helping to identify populations and patients that would benefit from the treatments and making sure that they're getting ahead. But really, it comes down to when you think about how complex a supply chain is in the healthcare space. Our goal is to use the data to help inform our clients, but also to influence the lab network and physicians and everybody to help make that system better.
Okay.
Right? That stat of 64% of people don't get the right testing, so they get the right treatment. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And there's so many points of breakdown. We're using data to help inform our network of labs, but also to help drive adopt a market.
Well, this week we had unfortunately a lady who died from that exact problem of false testing and these problems. So it's actually been a big case here in Ireland. So it's very sad, and that's why you can see the importance of what you guys are doing.
I mean, if you think about testing, I've only worked at Diaceutics since the beginning of the year, but think about COVID testing. I think it was probably better handled in Europe. It was a disaster in the United States. Right. Incredibly important COVID testing. Testing was literally the most important thing. But testing is an afterthought to most people, right? You would think that your doctor would order the test, but they have to know to order the test specifically. And then once the test happens, what's the best treatment for this? It's a really, really complicated system, and we're there to help drive fixing it.
Oh, it's fantastic. And again, I know you've an American accent, but Diaceutics is an Irish success story, which is we're really proud of and what they've done and where they've come. And it is a global company. As you said, they're doing work a lot of the work is in America. What's the plans for analytics and where Diaceutics are hoping to take the platform in the future?
So obviously, I think that your competitive advantage. So when you think about what data is, right? You have two advantages in data. It's either you have a moat, right? You have this data and nobody else has the data. That's not. Probably most moated data is not defendable, right? Unless you have a really regulatory or so if you have that moat, that's it, right? If you don't have the moat, then the actual just having data and selling it, that will crash to the lowest common denominator, small margin type of business. But it's really about making sense of the story. Again, you're trying to look at the whole journey of a patient, but you only may get 10 or 20 or 30% of the actual data to be able to understand where they are and how they're progressing, right? So being able to do that better, cheaper, and faster is where we're going. We already use machine learning. We already use multiple analytics tools. I'm really proud of the stack that we have at our company. It's literally the first time I've been able to say it. If any of you guys want to nerd out on Stack, just find me somewhere after the thing and we can talk about it. But I'm really proud to have that. So it's really just driving that and integrating more and more data. So when we talk about our data, when we start with 1 billion records or more, and then that's in our warehouse, and then we trim down to a specific cohort of patients. But even in what we deliver for a specific disease and biomarker, you're still talking about a couple million, maybe 10 or 20 million records that we're dealing with and processing. And BI tools want that to be very, very summarized, but analysts really want to get to the details, so how you deliver that at speed.
That's a big challenge.
And more importantly, how do you distribute that out? I have a term that I've always said: you should be liberating data and putting it as close to the work as possible. So I want to put that power and insight into the hands of the very, 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 very brilliant clinicians that we have on our team. So that they don't have to know Python or SQL or those things to be able to get the insight of it. Because the intersection of clinicians who can code, there's some of them, and when you can find them, they're amazing folks. But there's just not that many in the world.
And that's a big challenge for everybody with companies. Every company is the same. The analysts don't usually want to code,
Right.
and it's getting the data to them so that they can make the decisions, and they're not wrangling with the data,
Right.
which is what you guys are doing. You're using Databricks and Snowflake to make sure that the big data and the churning is done in advance so that they can then actually do the analysis, make decisions, and get the insights.
And that's where all the value comes from, right? If you can, reducing time to insight
Yeah.
and putting it as close to the work as practicable is the secret sauce of analytics.
Yeah. And your platform, you do the internal insights yourselves, but you also pharma companies and that, and they'll consume the data themselves, and you're actually providing that data as a service, really, is it?
We are. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. I have this thing about dashboards, right? Everybody wants dashboards. But the repeat rate on dashboards of people who come back to dashboards, you build a dashboard, everybody gets excited, they log in, and they never come back. So I think we're coming to time, I'll wrap us with a quick story.
Right, okay.
I was at home sick at a former company. I got a call, said, hey, we're shipping you an iPad. You're going to become a mobile dashboard developer. I said, okay, free iPad, right? This is in the time when an iPad was not, you couldn't get them, and they were very, very expensive. So the tool that we use was very challenging to use. Again, if you want to chat about that, some of you may know the first mobile dashboard. Some of you may know if you want to chat about that later. So we spent a lot of time to build this incredible dashboard for the CIO of United Health Group, where I worked before. Mm-hmm. And it had every single IT program of the 200 programs, and he could look at the status, the milestones, the issues and risks, all that great stuff. It was great. It was probably still the best thing I've ever probably delivered as a dashboard. It was really, really cool. In a day when nobody had it on their iPad. And I know absolutely he walked around the C-suite and showed everybody the dashboard. So look at this, it's so cool, right?
Yeah.
My next trip to Minnesota, I stopped by his office and I said, John, where's your dashboard? Where's your iPad? I didn't ask him how his dashboard was. He liked it. I asked him where his iPad was. He's like, it's at home. The kids love using that for reading. And I said, well, what about your dashboard? Blood, sweat, and tears on this dashboard. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
And he said to me, that thing is great, Gamester, as he called me by my last name. But it would be really nice if you could just tell me.
Yeah.
If you could just tell me when I should look at this.
Yeah.
And that was the easiest thing I ever built. We built that in like 5 minutes, and he was completely delighted, right?
But it's the answer he wants, not the chart, not the fancy device. He wants the answer.
So when you start thinking about where you're going with monetization, right? When you're starting to think about how do I sell product, right?
Yeah.
How do I get people excited about this data?
Yeah.
It's about helping them to know when to pay attention.
Oh, 100%. Listen, Scott, thanks again for your time. Thanks for making the journey down to Dublin. Anybody wants to talk to Scott or to ourselves, we're at the DataBuilders stand just outside the auditorium. If you want to win a Lego Star Wars box, come to our stand, scan the QR code. You could be in with a draw. The draw will be done this evening, and we'd love you to win it. So come over and meet the team. The Sisense team and the DataBuilders team are there, and we'd love to talk to you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.